And we're back with the program. My name is Gerald Glassford from Pop Culture Cosmos and Game Source. We truly appreciate you being part of the broadcast here today. And one of the things that we wanted to talk about on today's show was a little bit of anime. And the reason why is because there's so many new things going on in the anime world, and I want to talk about two things in particular. And who better to talk about them with me than the creator and host of the AniQuest podcast? It's Sarah Kay. How are you today?
I am good. Yourself?
I am very well, thank you. And it's great to have you on the show talking some anime. So I want to get into it right now with obviously the big news of the week in the anime world, and that is, well, actually number one, the news that Netflix has announced a slew of new and original anime programming that's coming on the way for Netflix viewers. And I was hoping that you could not only go into detail about those shows, which ones you want to talk about, but also what that could mean to people who may be just wanting to get into anime and wanting to understand a little bit more, and also for those who are really into anime programming.
Okay. I think that it's an important step in Netflix's model towards anime. In my kind of a shameless plug here, but a few years ago did a sort of podcast type video about where I just discussed anime and Netflix and just Netflix's history of how they've been dealing with the anime that they've been streaming or licensing. And this is the first time that we've actually come across something that they have legitimately produced. Everything else until now that they have been labeling as Netflix originals have just been things that they've been licensing rather than anything that they actually produce themselves. So I think that is a huge step towards them actually listening to fans. Just let me kind of get myself. You said you make this you convert this into audio, right?
Oh yeah. Believe me, it sounds so much better in post production. You should see me and Josh on a weekly basis. We flub through about 90 minutes, and then I can go ahead and I make it sound much better in 60.
Okay, so where was I? Okay, so the big issue that I had at that point was that not only were they taking credit for things that they weren't really theirs at that point when they were just licensing stuff, they were also taking these shows, even though if they had licensed them during the airing or before the airing, and just waiting for them to be completely aired and then upload them all in one go, which I get is a model that has worked for them for their content. If you read up on Netflix, they're very much into the binge model that they think that people don't want to wait weeks in between episodes, which, okay, I understand, but
well, they've actually changed the model of the way people actually watch programming and watch television programming, because like you said, they have I don't know, they've originated, but they certainly revolutionized that binge model, correct?
Very much so. And my big worry at that point was that because the fact that the shows were still airing in Japan, that this would encourage people to seek piracy because they don't want to wait to watch the episodes. So the good thing about the fact that they have now announced these shows that they're actually going to produce, I feel like this might actually just satisfy that model for them, and that actually might increase the chance that they will actually start releasing their licenses every week instead of all in one go, as they have done with their produced content. And the reason that I do that I think that this is actually quite possible now is because just a couple months ago when Riverdale was airing, they got the license for that, and they started uploading that weekly the day after it would air on I think the CW. Yeah. And clearly that, as far as I know, has worked for them because it was a very successful show. So hopefully in that case, it actually helps them to see that uploading weekly will also be profitable. As far as the shows themselves, I think that they look quite promising, just because of how Netflix has, because of the type of attitude that Netflix has had towards their other shows in the past. If you look, for example, into the history of how House of Cards was made, Kevin Spacey and company were trying to get the show produced years before Netflix even had their hands on it, and just nobody was really offering anything, or if they were, it just wasn't what they were hoping for. And finally, the Netflix stepped forward and gave this show that wasn't really getting any chances, a guaranteed first season and a guaranteed second season before the first season was even made. So they just have had this model of always giving these little shows that could chances to blossom. And when you look at, for instance, Castlevania, which of course is an anime, but it's very anime-like and very indicative of what they want to follow once they start making anime, that this is not something you would typically make in animation. It's a very, very dark subject matter, and especially here in the Western part of the world, we really associate animation with children. Of course, that's kind of changing these days, but
yes, absolutely. With so many things that I think Nicktoons in the '90s started changing that philosophy, but it has evolved even more into the Adult Swim programs, and then also as well now today there's a lot of a lot of things in the works that will cater to more to an older audience when it comes to animation as well. And the Simpsons, Simpsons, South Park, and whatnot. Those models have changed a little bit to the facilities, but I get what you're saying as far as the Disney magic and creating Pixar and creating that type of light, happy tone as opposed to what anime does on a lot of occasions in regards to their type of look and feel. Is that correct?
Oh, for sure. And it's like a lot of the cartoons that you just mentioned, the ones that were directed towards adults, were comedies. And so this one is one that's being taken very seriously. And yeah, something like that is quite rare on this side of the world at the very least. I'm trying to think of where I was going with that. Yeah, so it's definitely not a typical show that would be made. And if you look at some of the history of some of the anime that they have announced, like the Devilman series.
Let me actually run off the list for you as far as that's for everyone out there. Let me run off the list for you and just see which ones that interest you in particular, Sarah. We'll start with Be the Beginning. That's from the production company that's most familiar with Ghost in the Shell, Sword Guy, the animation, Lost Song, Knights of the Zodiac, Saint Seiya, Baki, Kakiguri, Fate, Fate, Apocrypha, Children of the Whales, also as well, Rilakuma series, and then Godzilla Monster Planet, if I can get that out correctly, are some of the offerings that Netflix has on the way. So which ones do you think? Oh, I'm sorry, Devilman, Crybaby, Cannon Busters. So which of those do you think might appeal to not only hardcore anime fans but a wider audience as well?
Oh, we have to look more into into these in that case.
But I'll say, do any stick out to you right away as being something that may be a a good watch for anime fans?
Hang on, I'm just going to try to find a better synopsis of these because the site that I was looking at wasn't all that good. I'm sorry to belay this a little bit more, but just want to. Do you have a link with all the synopses? Because I can't.
Just put that up for you. Cartoon Brew.
Okay, thank you. Wait, where'd it go? Oh, here we go.
There's also, I see, Aiko Incarnation, Lost Song. Like I said, before the Rilakuma series.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I got everyone. Yeah, I think I announced everyone. So, okay. All I can say is for me, Godzilla, obviously with general audiences, and then possibly even anime fans as well, probably can relate to that one the easiest, since Godzilla still is something that is kept in relative pop culture. Obviously, the success from the big screen has helped with that, and now it looks like they're going to translate that true image of Godzilla onto the small screen with an anime feature. So that's definitely something to look forward to. But other than that, just let me know if there's some others that might stick out to you as anime that's coming to Netflix that might be something to look forward to.
Right now, the one that sticks out to me the most is Lost Song because of its focus on fantasy, and it just generally has a very beautiful art style from the few shots that we can see. And yeah, this one is, from what I can tell, it's not based on anything. I don't think so. It's kind of hard to tell what exactly this story is going to be like, but I'd say this is the one that intrigues me the most, and especially fantasy as a whole in anime is something that is very, very westernized. So I feel like this is probably something that's going to be good for potentially new audiences, and it could still appeal to the current fans because because of the popularity of things like Seven Deadly Sins and Sword Art Online, and both of which, of course, are on Netflix. Seven Deadly Sins is one of Netflix's licenses, and Sword Art Online is just something that they also stream. It's I'd say that, again, based purely on the fact that it's a fantasy series and just how westernized fantasy is. And again, if anyone can look up the artwork, it looks fantastic. And I think just based on that alone, that from what we can see, I think that's something that can very much appeal to both newcomers and seasoned fans.
Oh, that's an excellent suggestion. Definitely sounds like something that can be that to both parties, and then also be the beginning. I think if fans of Ghost in the Shell will definitely look towards that, from the same production company as Ghost in the Shell, definitely look towards that one as well. So with all those great programs and great shows coming to Netflix, what are your hopes for Netflix, and what are your hopes for the audiences to gain as far as all these shows on Netflix, do you think it's something going to be something that's going to be done periodically, or do you think it's going to be something done that, like you said, they have a tendency to do where they just throw that out there and see what sticks?
Sorry, I actually had another one that stuck out to me that I wanted to talk about first, if that's okay with you.
Of course, yeah. Go right ahead.
So the second one that really sticks out to me is the Knights of the Zodiac Saint Seiya. Just for very different reasons. If you grew up in, I think, like the late 90s, early 2000s, there was this really not very good edit of the Saint Seiya series called Knights of the Zodiac, and I watched that a lot as a kid, so that's quite nostalgic for me, so I'm kind of excited for that. I do think it's a bit weird that they kept the Knights of the Zodiac name, because that version of the series doesn't have the greatest reputation, and I believe there exists, to some extent, an uncut version of a dub that retains the Saint Seiya name. And I think it also just looks, based on the poster, it looks very interesting. It kind of reminds me of another series that's on Netflix, Knights of Sidonia. It's just the poster kind of reminds me of that. And again, if you like Knights of Sidonia, I think that that is probably a good recommendation to try to check out the new Knights of the Zodiac. No, sorry, Knights of the Zodiac series. Although I must admit, I haven't read the manga, or even if there is a manga, I haven't read it, and I haven't watched any Saint Seiya material beyond the Knights of the Zodiac dub. But I think that it's a good nostalgic property for them to have, and potentially something that newcomers could like as well, because it's kind of obscure, so you might find like a hidden gem in it that you might enjoy. So if you like things that are like space themed, I might be wrong there. As I recall it, I believe it was in space. But so if you like things that are space themed, that's potentially very interesting for you to check out.
Oh, that's some great suggestions. Absolutely, definitely a lot of great options there. And I just think that Netflix is doing a lot with the anime scene. And when somebody wants to go ahead and now recognizes, or even the casual fan that wants to know and understand the anime world better, and sees this influx of shows coming to Netflix, what does that say for them, or even hardcore anime fans, about maybe veering away from Crunchyroll and other entities that have been traditionally the places to go for anime in the past?
First of all, I'll say I hope that doesn't necessarily happen, because I use Crunchyroll a lot, so I would hate to think that they're losing business because of Netflix. But I have trouble with really picturing whether or not people actually migrate from Crunchyroll or other services to Netflix, because while their licensing model has kind of worked, except for the thing where they didn't upload episodes weekly. Their actual service when it comes to anime is not all that great, particularly when it comes to their subtitles, because they're very hard to read, and some of them are actually misspelled, which, okay, I can get on like services like Crunchyroll because they don't have as much money coming into them, but Netflix is a professional service, so I feel like they should be paying a bit more attention to that, especially when a lot of anime fans prefer subtitles over dubs. So
But then again, I think you're talking about maybe a specific entity that's focused on one thing, as opposed to a channel that wants to be everything to everyone. And I think that's where you get into a jack of all trades, master of none type of deal. That's just a personal opinion that I have, but I think that's what I seem to gather from what they're doing.
Yeah, that's true. Um,
and their audience, for the some part, they're trying to grab, like I said before, they're not just trying to grab the hardcore audience, but they're also trying to grab a casual audience as well. And maybe casual audiences aren't noticing or aren't understanding anime well enough to maybe pick up on those subtleties that even hardcore anime fans are not willing to let go as much, or even they are willing to let go as much, just so they can see actually some great new anime coming to their television set.
Yeah, that's definitely true. I guess my problem is that I'm coming at this as a hardcore anime fan, so it's a bit hard for me to come at this as an outsider because I haven't been for about 10 years now. But
no, and that's what the kind of opinion that we're looking for is that, again, the casual fan may not pick up on those subtleties, but the hardcore fan is. So to a hardcore fan, these different types of things, whether it's a dub issue, whether it's a subtitle issue or whatnot, these type of things, the subtleties may be all the difference between not picking up Netflix and staying with Crunchyroll as opposed to trying out those new shows on Netflix. Correct?
Mm-hmm. And I guess as far as, again, what you were saying before, the potential of people using Netflix more than Crunchyroll, I think it's good to an extent because again, as we've been saying, Crunchyroll is directed more towards the hardcore fans, whereas Netflix is more directed towards everybody. And so this will actually get a lot of animes that otherwise wouldn't have much exposure, a lot more exposure. Yeah, it's going to get a lot of shows that deserve credit, probably the credit that they do deserve. Again, going back to one of their licenses, Knights of Sidonia, that's a computer-generated series, and those typically do not do well. I think that most companies, apart from Netflix, would not even touch it with a 10-foot pole because those just don't sell. But because of the fact that it was licensed by Netflix and it has the Netflix original logo on it, it is automatically a success, basically.
Well, those are some great opinions indeed. And if anyone out there has questions or has an opinion on what's going on within the anime world when it comes to Netflix, all those great shows, please let us know. popculturecosmos@yahoo.com, popculturecosmos, Game Source, and Humanica Media on Facebook and Twitter as well. And I must say right now, if you are a big fan of anime, or even if you just want to become more knowledgeable about the anime scene, you have the AniQuest podcast that's now available on Podbean's YouTube and iTunes. Is that correct?
Yes, I believe so.
Sweet. That's awesome indeed. So definitely check out the AniQuest podcast that's on Podbean, iTunes, and YouTube. Definitely check that out. That's a must for anyone that wants to get into anime, or also hardcore anime fans as well. But we can't talk about Netflix and also we can't talk also about the whole thing with Netflix and Crunchyroll without talking about the other recent news that's going on within the anime world, and that is Sony purchasing the rights to Funimation and all their properties, as far as, and to be able to transfer it over to the PlayStation 4 format, so that now that they have something that's they have something that they can call their own on the PlayStation 4 format. So I ask you, Sarah Kay of the AniQuest podcast, like I said, on Podbean, iTunes, and YouTube, I ask you, as host of the AniQuest podcast, What does this kind of give you as far as another option for not only you as a hardcore anime fan, but also casual anime fans as well?
I'm sorry. There was actually a delay in the audio, so I missed part of your question.
Oh, no worries. Talking about the transaction, the purchase of Funimation by Sony Television, with the intended purpose of being able to put it into a PlayStation 4 platform release. It's going to be one of their little cornerstones for PlayStation 4 owners, PlayStation Plus, if you have the subscription and all that. So what do you think that type of acquisition does in the eyes of anime fans, as far as being interested now in either owning or becoming more proficient with their PlayStation 4?
I think that it's a bit of a mixed bag as for the whole entire acquisition. As for the digital side, which is what you're asking about, the PS4, I think it's very good. It's I honestly, I don't have a PS4. I'm still on old technology with my PS3. I don't know how common it is for people to actually go and purchase movies or whatnot from, I think, the PlayStation Store.
Well, I know Crunchyroll is a one of the featured options, I believe, on the Xbox format. So I think this may be their way of being able to compete with that, but also as well try and gain a new audience, and them seeing the success of anime on Netflix and then trying to bring that success to their venture. Correct?
Well, just to be clear, are you talking about like the Funimation Now app being on the PlayStation, or
they purchased Funimation as an entity? Yeah.
But
So
I just wasn't sure if you're talking about putting an app on PlayStation, or if actually an app. So yeah, I think that's great. Fans have been asking for an app for a long time. People who have been subscribed to Funimation Now have always been wondering, when are we going to get a PlayStation app? You know, a lot of people have had the inconvenience of having to plug their computers into their TVs, which isn't always the best option. And so that's the positive side for fans. And there's also the fact that with it being on a more mainstream format, again, we have the potential of bringing in new fans who see this app and say, hey, I wonder what that's about. Let's download it and see if there's any good shows on it. So again, very, very positive on the digital side of things. But on the physical side of things, fans are a little bit worried because Sony, they own another anime licensing company here in the US. At least I believe that they own them, Aniplex. And I believe any anime fans that are among your listeners right now just let a huge groan, because they are quite famous for having like very, very expensive releases. The releases of their shows can go up, can be sold for about, I think, anything around $80 a piece for only volumes of like 5 episodes. So if you want an entire series, you have to spend hundreds of dollars to get the complete series. And fans are quite scared that that is a model that Funimation could potentially adopt because of Sony in the future. Now they assure us on our website that they won't be changing that for the foreseeable future, but anything could happen. You would hope that Sony will see that Funimation's model has somewhat worked for them these past couple of years, and that there's really no reason to change it as far as the pricing model goes.
Well, I'm hoping that's the case as well, although there's definitely a possibility that they will tie it in more closely with the PlayStation Plus models that they have as far as a subscription base. And they're probably also gauging what we originally talked about with Netflix and all the shows that are coming to it, and gauging whether they should go ahead full board into trying to make Funimation into a major part and a major component of the PlayStation Plus concept as well. I know Crunchyroll, it being on both formats, both the PlayStation and the Xbox formats, has been something very good for Crunchyroll. But especially, I know that Xbox has gone out of its way to promote Crunchyroll even more on its platform. So maybe this is a way of Sony sending a message that they want to go ahead and compete on a higher level as well in the anime scene. So I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. I actually didn't know that because I don't have an Xbox. But yeah, for sure, if that's the case, that absolutely makes sense with Sony owning PlayStation. So yeah, with that in mind, that could absolutely be their intentions, and you can completely see why they would want to do that.
Well, it's a good sign for anime fans and the fact that they're more incorporating the PlayStation 4 with the anime scene. And with Sony, the PlayStation right now is their driver of a great portion of the revenue, and also probably the largest portion of their profits right now as an entity. So definitely them trying to make the PlayStation platform even broader with bringing in all this new anime to their platform is definitely a great sign indeed for at least those fans that are interested in getting a PlayStation for in the now, or in the that they have now, or in the near future as well. So some very good signs for anime fans as a whole, as far as new anime coming out on Netflix, and also Sony's acquisition of Funimation. Just hope that they understand, like you said, that they understand what Funimation is fundamentally, and that they will stick to what's worked for the company in the past, and hopefully going forward we'll be able to show that in an even better light going forward in the future. So any last thoughts on the anime scene? Because like I said, you've been so great today with your opinions and whatnot. So we just want to hear more about not only how we can get a hold of your show, but also any more last thoughts on the animation scene.
I guess what I would add to the Sony thing is that this also brings up the question of what's going to happen with the licenses that Funimation has lost in the last couple of years. Because for those of you who don't know, Funimation has had many shows taken from them because of Aniplex. Some agreements with certain companies that would have contributed to the creation of these shows have caused the licenses to automatically go to Aniplex, and people have been quite upset about this because a lot of these are well-known shows like Full Metal Alchemist, and either they know that if Aniplex releases them, they're going to be insanely expensive, and a lot of the hardcore fans aren't going to be able to afford to buy them if they do not already have them. Or Aniplex is just going to sit on those licenses because they can, and they're not going to release them at all. For instance, with Mushishi, they have the second season. It is, as far as I know, only available on Crunchyroll. Actually, no, I believe it was available on Netflix at a time, but there's no physical release. Currently, there is no physical release in North America, nor does there seem to be one in the near future. And as far as we can tell, they don't ever plan to release it. So just the fact that they continue to do stuff like that is quite worrisome and pretty anger-inducing, especially if you're fans of those properties. So you would hope that with the new partnership with Sony, that Funimation might be able to somehow get those titles back. They haven't been too clear about the status of that on their website, and yeah, it's not entirely clear if that will happen. We hope it does, but there's also the fact that you need to keep in mind that it's not only happening to Funimation; it's happening to, I think, yeah, pretty much all of the companies that have had Aniplex-based licenses are now getting their shows taken back from them. So, yeah, and you just hope that those shows will go back to Funimation just for the sake of availability, because it's going to be a lot more widely available to people through Funimation than it will be through Aniplex.
Oh, that's some interesting news indeed, and definitely some great insight provided by you today. And I'll tell you what, Sarah Kay has been awesome on our show, and we're just hoping that we just truly get a chance to talk to her as much as she wants to come on our show to talk more anime in the future as part of the Pop Culture Cosmos scene and whatnot. So we just truly appreciate you coming on the show, Sarah. And again, if anybody wants to check out what's going on as far as in the anime world, what's going on as far as how to better understand the anime scene, there is no better place to go than the AniQuest podcast. That's available on iTunes, YouTube, and Podbean. That's the AniQuest podcast. And Sarah Kay, I just want to say thank you again for being part of the program here today. And I said, any last thoughts on the way out?
Well, first of all, thank you very much for having me here. This was very interesting. Just perhaps one more thing I might have to say is just a bit of self-promotion. I am working on I'm currently working on a YouTube series, which I'm planning to call Academics in Anime. Basically, the entire purpose of this series is to be like an educational tool of sorts for cultural studies students, because I'm a recent graduate, and I found that throughout my studies, if I ever wanted to write something on anime, there just wasn't that many resources that I could find. There's not many secondary sources or anything like that. So the intention of this series is to basically be an essay-based series, which will gather all of these resources together, and potentially could even be used as a resource for essays or what have you. And yeah, generally it's just supposed to be kind of like hopefully kind of a community-based thing that will help people in their education.
Oh, that's awesome to hear, and I'm definitely looking forward to seeing that, and definitely looking forward to hearing more about that in the future. And you are most welcome to come back on the show with updates on that, and then also updates on the anime scene itself, because definitely want to get more information on the anime scene. And I know there's a lot of people out there that are kind of looking forward to what's coming in the future for the anime world, and then also those who are looking to get into it indeed. So we definitely appreciate you being part of the program here today, and like we said, wish you all the best. And you're most welcome to come back on the show at any point in time. That's Sarah. Oh, yes, absolutely. I appreciate you being on the program. And that is Sarah Kay. She is the host of the AniQuest podcast that's now available on YouTube, iTunes, and Podbean, and look forward to more amazing stuff for her in the future, and her coming back to our show, The Pop Culture Cosmos.